Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make over some pieces and we're going to start with this little side table that I thrifted. And I really like the color on this. It's a very light kind of bluish green, but it didn't have a color to touch up the areas that I'm going to be working on. I don't like the knob on it, and obviously I'm going to have to paint the inside of the drawer so that red doesn't show. And then I never have cared for these little wooden pegs that fill in the screw holes, so I'm going to take those off, and they're stuck on pretty good with paint, but I take both of those off and I'm just going to fill in with some air dry clay. And I'm also going to add this little trim piece. This is a mold that I was gifted from my sister. I think she ordered it from Amazon, but I don't have any idea about the link to it. But it's just a small enough piece that will work on the front of this side table. So like I said, I'm going to take some air dry clay, and I use the DAS brand. I just think that works better for me, and I feel like it is priced well in comparison to some of the others, but the thing that I like most about it, I guess, is it's not as bad to crack as some of the others. So I just spread a little bit of cornstarch in the bottom of my mold, and then just fill it in with the clay, and I just kind of press and make sure that I don't have any air pockets. And then I like to attach my mold to the item before it's dry, so that it molds well to it. And if you didn't know, you can actually even paint it while it's wet. So I just let it dry about 30 to 45 minutes, and then I just go right over it and paint it. What I've painted this is, I tried to find a color that was similar and just could not find one. But the closest I could find, and it doesn't have as much green in it, and it's a little, just slightly lighter, and it's called Haint Blue, and that is a Dixie Belle color. So what I did was I just mixed a little bit of the evergreen from Dixie Belle in it, and when I say a little, I mean very little, and just maybe a few drops, and then I just kind of added a drop or two at a time until I got as close to this color as I could, and I was real happy with the color that I got. The only difference is it's a little bit more obvious of a color as far as the blue, and it has a little bit more green in it, like I said, and I do like that. So, but it's still light enough. Now, I didn't paint right over this drawer because, as you can see, there's all this red, and I don't know what that is, but I'm almost certain that will bleed. So I just took this drawer outside and sprayed a really good coat of polyurethane, actually a polyacrylic spray, just a matte finish. And you can use any clear matte finish, or clear, you can even put a sheen on it if you want, because you're going to be painting right over the top of it. So I just made sure to get that covered well, because like I said, if you don't, that red will definitely bleed through. So that's just a step that you really can't skip on this particular piece. So I just painted the whole thing. I painted the entire inside and the entire outside, because there was some of the red on the outside, and when you pull that drawer open, I like to add some scripture there, and even if I weren't going to add the scripture, I just don't like the look. It just, I want that clean side, so I couldn't have sanded that off well, because it would I just don't think I could have gotten that off. So my solution here was just to paint the whole thing. And when you paint those sides, you have to be real careful that you don't get your coats too thick. So you want, even if it's going to be more coats, you want to make very thin coats because you don't want your drawer sticking. And I was happy that this drawer, had some play actually. It wasn't very tight at all. So I didn't have any issues with it sticking. And then once I got this painted and it was dry well, then I used some Mod Podge and I glued this piece of tissue wrap that I actually got from Amazon a year or so ago, and I just cut it to fit the drawer and glued it inside. I just felt like it needed a little something on the inside. You could use decoupage paper here, just regular scrapbook paper, or even book pages, whatever you want to cover the inside with. And I tore that a little bit putting it on, but I don't mind that. It's just a minor imperfection, and that's fine inside the drawer. So here, I'm just going to take one of my scripture stamps, and I've had a lot of questions about those. I do get a lot of my stamps from Hobby Lobby. They're good about carrying a lot of scripture. And then I got some from Amazon. And then, honestly, I thrifted a lot of them as well. So I've really lucked up in finding several of these. But anytime you see a scripture stamp at a thrift store, I would get it because you know how pricey stamps can get when you have to buy several. And usually when you get these at a thrift store, they're in a bag with several. So you may get a lot of pieces in there that you don't want, but if you just get one or two of these, then it's still worth buying the whole bag. And then I just put a different knob on the front. And now I am adding a stencil on each of these corners, and I'm doing it with just regular Stays On black ink. And my ink pad actually needed more ink, but I wanted this to be more faint, so I didn't re-ink it until I finished this. And then you can clean these up with just alcohol. You can wipe this straight off with alcohol. Stays On ink really does stay on well, but I have found that the alcohol will wipe it right off. Not off this. Obviously, I couldn't get it off my piece of furniture, but anything slick like this, it will wipe right off. So like I said, I just put this on each corner, and I just kind of put it faintly on there. And then there is my little table finished. And like I said, I love to add scripture to the drawers. I just think it's a neat little surprise when you open that drawer, and then there's that little message on the side, maybe at a time when they needed it most. And even when I don't paint those sides, I still add that scripture when there's an opportunity to do that with the drawer. And I also thrifted this little step stool. It's a really good size, and it's just raw wood, so perfect opportunity to just give this a good paint job. Most of you will guess the color that I'm putting on this is buttercream, because I do use buttercream a lot. But I give this 2 coats of the color buttercream, and then let that dry well. And as you can see, I probably could have gotten away with one coat, but I just went ahead, and there was a few places that needed an extra coat, so I just went ahead and went over the whole thing. And now I'm going to add some decoupage to the top of this, and this is some rice paper that I just used in a recent video, and I could have done it long ways and it would have fit almost perfectly, but I just wanted, when you're looking at the stool, I wanted her to be the right way, so, or him. So I'm using some water on a paintbrush here just to kind of wet that enough to where when I try to tear it, it will be easier to tear without getting into my image or getting too far from my image. But I just kind of outlined where I felt like it would look better. And then, like I said, I'm just going to tear this out. And I'm going to decoupage just the angel and the little flowers around it. And I just love these little decoupage papers. And I'm going to, like I said, I think they're rice paper, but I'm going to link those in the description because I was real happy when I got those with the quality. And I just love the images on them. And actually came at a good time because of, I know a lot of people decorate for Christmas with angels, but also for Valentine's Day, they work well. And I don't even think you need a holiday to decorate with angels, especially if you like Shabby Chic. I think it just really goes well with Shabby Chic. And I just love these soft colors that are in these. As you can see here, you don't have to take a lot of pains when you use that water method. And you just have to be real careful that you don't put so much water on your paintbrush that it gets into your image, that it bleeds into your image. And then if it does, you have to be a little more careful when you tear it out. So once I get this torn out, and before I decoupage it on, I wanted some sort of a background on the top, but I didn't want any kind of a strong background. And I thought about doing some sort of faux painting on it just to give it some sort of texture. But I decided in the end that I would just take my my IOD Kindest Regards stamp and just stamp that in the background. But instead of using the black like I generally would, now here I don't want this sharp edge on the edges, so I'm just I just added some water just so I can make that a softer cut there instead of just that straight line. I just don't like the straight lines at all. But anyway, before I decoupage this on, then I just used some of my antiquing ink to ink this up, and the antique oxide. But the reason that I did that is because, like I said, I just wanted it a really soft look. And there's some of this color in some script, just very lightly in the background of this paper anyway. And so the only problem with this is when you go over it with your decoupage, obviously this will wipe right off. It's not a permanent finish. Generally you would use it on paper, so it won't be sealed. It'll wipe right off. So when you decoupage, instead of putting your glue on your little stool itself, then you just have to make sure that you get your image covered well, and then you can put it on there and just kind of tap it into place. But even then you have to be careful not to brush outside of where your image is, because like I said, it will smear. So and then this also needs to be sealed. The whole piece does. So what I did was, instead of trying to do any kind of a brush-on sealer or even a clear wax, you can't do that with this. So what I did is, after I got this pressed on well and I was sure there was no bubbles in it, then I took it outside. Well, actually, I let it dry a little bit first. And then I took it outside and I used a clear matte spray on it. And you can use any kind. But here's the thing, even with that, if you get too thick of a coat, then it will wet this script and make it run. So you have to just very lightly mist it the first time, and then let that dry, and then maybe lightly mist it again. And then after you're sure you've got it sealed in, then you can give it a good coat of your sealer. And I know that seems like a lot of trouble. It really wasn't much at all. You just kind of very lightly mist it, and then I got that sealed. But I think it was worth all that because I like that real soft look in the background. So now I had this little rack. I don't even know where I got it. And it's just on some tongue and groove boards. So there's just a little wall hook here that's attached to that. So I didn't like the harsh look. So what I did is buttercream on this, and I painted my hook also in buttercream. And then I just used my sander and just really distressed this. So I distressed around the edges and down where these boards are attached so that would show up, and just kind of roughed this up. And I also painted down the sides of it, and it just gave it a lot cleaner, better look. And then I feel like painting that hook the same color softened it up a lot. And then now, instead of having to go in a farmhouse decor, even if I were going to paint it farmhouse, I would have crisped I would have added more white and made sure that was a good contrast between it and the black. But since I was going with the softer look, then I just wanted it all to just kind of be painted the same color. And then, like I said, I'll add some distress when I'm finished. But in order to make this shabby chic, because that's the vignette that I'm working on, then I also had to take some extra steps for this. So this one, I just did one coat on it. It covered fine with one coat. And like I said, I'm going to be doing all that extra distressing on it anyway. So one coat was plenty. And before I distress this, I'm using that same technique with the antique ink. And I'm also going to add this in the background on this. Like I said, in that same lighter color. And I'm using, I think walnut on this is the color on my antique ink pad. But I'm just kind of very lightly doing it, and I'm not even re-inking my stamp here as I add to other areas. But that way, again, it's just a really soft look. And again, on this one, I'm going to use some of that same decoupage paper and decoupage just the angel right in the center of this. So I used the same technique here and just kind of took my paintbrush and wet around the image and then tore it out. And again, you have to apply your glue directly to your piece because this is the same kind of ink. So I'm going to have to take the same steps with this one in getting this chalk paint sealed. Now, if you're hearing chimes, it's because it's 70 degrees here in Tennessee today, in Knoxville. And I have my back door open, and I have some beautiful chimes that my neighbor bought for me when my mother died, in memory of her. And today, those chimes are really going crazy. I wonder if my neighbor, because they live right directly behind me, so I wonder if they've regretted those chimes because they're very loud. But I've enjoyed them so much, and my mother always loved chimes anyway. So, like I said, I'm going to seal this the same way. But first, I'm also going to add a stencil to the corners of this because I felt like it needed that to be kind of pulled together. So I used a little stencil that I had and some rose-colored eyeshadow. And I know that sounds odd, but I've used it different times. And it works really well on paper, but it also works on items like this, but you just obviously need to really seal it in when you're finished. And the same technique that I used on the other piece that I'll be using on this will be good for sealing that in also. And to get the color that I wanted for this, I'm just having to kind of mix some colors with my pink so that I have a warm enough pink on this, and it worked out really well. And if you mess up, you can always go over it. So I know that I'm risking here mixing it the way I am, but like I said, if I got the color off, all I have to do is just add the other color in and go over it. So it worked out really well. And as you can see, that really added more of a shabby chic look to this. And then, like I said, after I sealed this, I did go back and do some sanding on it. And I really like how this one turned out. And I like that hook was black to begin with, and it gave me a good distress color to come through. And now I thrifted this little pot, and I really like the pot. But wasn't crazy about the flowers in it. I do like sunflowers, but these have just kind of have had their day, and you can tell that they're kind of worn and just not a fresh look at all. So I wanted to pull those out. And because the inside has all this styrofoam already glued in, you wouldn't ever be able to get that out completely, so I'm just going to have to paint it just like it is. And surprise, surprise, I'm using buttercream again, but I'm giving this 2 coats of the color buttercream, and I just have to be really careful and paint around the top so that I get that rim painted, and I don't get this, I guess it's a moss in my paint. So, like I said, once I get 2 coats on this and let it dry well, then I'm going to add some stamps to this. And this is part of a redesign set called I See Paris. Both of these are, and I'm using that same ink and adding a stamp to both the front and back of this. And again, obviously, I'll have to seal this the same way, just by kind of slightly misting over it and letting that dry and then putting another coat. Now, obviously, I can't stamp right onto this because of the shape of it. My stamp just wouldn't lay right. So I just stamped on 1 layer of a napkin, and then I'll just cut that out, and then I'll just decoupage that on, and it'll look. When you're stamping on a napkin like this, it almost looks like it's stamped straight onto your project because that 1 layer of the napkin almost just kind of goes away. And then in order to get this to lay down better on this odd shape, it's okay if you get a few wrinkles in this because, again, this napkin is just going to kind of go away, but you don't want your shape, your stamp distorted. So I just kind of concentrated more around the edges to keep from getting that Mod Podge on the ink, or the glue actually is what I'm using here on the ink. So I was just able to brush around the edges and make sure that those laid down well. And then I just took some plastic and kind of rubbed over the rest, and that made it lay down well without smearing my ink. So although this took a little bit of effort, it really did, it worked out in the end. And I'm using just a paper towel here to kind of soak up some of that before I rubbed it with that plastic. So like I said, I just put one of these on the front and the back And then I sealed it the same way that I sealed the other pieces, just spraying it lightly, one layer at a time. Now, I could have distressed this because I had that darker color underneath, but I just didn't really feel the need to distress it. I like the look of it before, without doing any distressing, so I didn't even bother. But now, obviously, it's going to have some flowers in it. So, I looked up and found these roses at Walmart. And I really like the look of them. And I think they were just 97 cents. So, I'm just cutting these apart and not using much of the greenery, because I feel like the greenery, if you do buy a cheaper floral, what tends to make it look cheaper is the greenery. And so the greenery that I leave on these, most of it will be hidden, and I'm just going to concentrate more on the roses. And I'm just going to kind of build a round bouquet here and just fill it all in. And then if I have any spaces, I'll have a few spaces that I'll just add some baby's breath that I also got at Walmart. And once this is finished, you can't tell that it's made with such cheap floral. So I just make sure that all my stems are cut relatively the same size. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more height in the center and just kind of let that transition down some. And like I said, I want to make sure that this is filled completely in. I don't want to see between the roses at all. So where a rose is not butted up next to the next one, and there's a little space at all, like I said, I'll just fill that in with some artificial baby's breath, and that will give this a really shabby chic look. Now, I know that a lot of people are just not really comfortable at all with flower arranging, but I don't even consider this arranging. You're just kind of filling it in. That's all that you're doing. You're not having to do any kind of guesswork here. Just fill in where there's a space. And this took 2 of the 97-cent stems, and then I just used just a small part of another of this stem of baby's breath and just filled in here and there. I didn't want it to look too much like a wedding bouquet, so I didn't put too many in there, but I felt like it needed a little something. So as you can see, it didn't take long at all to put these roses in here, and actually this whole piece didn't take long at all to redo. And I'm thinking my next video is going to be some more hang tags, because I need to get my spring items out, and I'm needing some spring hang tags. So I'm going to show you some quick ways to do those. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.